7 votes could be all it takes to strip Democrats of some of their power at the state capitol. Don't ever say your vote doesn't count. Republicans in Congress are trying to jumpstart a federal investigation into Colorado's highway safety after a spike in deadly crashes. Mike Tyson's return to the ring is generating a lot of buzz. Just don't tell them Colorado doesn't think it's a real fight. And you never outgrow Legos. Just like this show never outgrows hearing about your good news.
This is a great place to come down and get inspired.
Kyle's off, but that doesn't mean we can't build something good. Tonight on Next. Next time you think about staying home on Election Day, think again. Every vote counts. In fact, a 7-vote difference in an El Paso County race will cost Colorado Democrats their supermajority control of the state House. Yes, 7 votes. A final unofficial count in El Paso County's District 16 has Democratic incumbent Representative Stephanie Vigil trailing her Republican challenger Rebecca Kelty by just 7 votes. That's well within, of course, the margin for an automatic recount. If Kelty's lead holds, that makes 3 seats Republicans picked up during this election. Democrats will still be in the majority, of course, but will lose their supermajority power to pass anything they want over opposition from Republicans and the governor. The Aurora Police Department says their own internal review determined an officer who shot and killed Kylan Lewis earlier this year did not violate agency policy. They're asking you to take their word for it because the department still won't provide details about that internal investigation or release that unedited body camera video of the shooting, which we've been asking for. Back on May 23rd, Aurora SWAT officers tried to arrest the 37-year-old black man in connection with an attempted homicide. Police said Lewis failed to comply with directions and get on the ground, and an officer shot Lewis when he reached behind his back and pulled something out. Lewis died 2 days after the shooting. It was later determined that Lewis was holding a cell phone, not a weapon. Today, the department announced their Force Review Board, which includes the police chief and an independent consent decree monitor, determined the shooting did not violate policy. Republican District Attorney John Kellner and an Arapahoe County grand jury have also declined to pursue charges against the officer involved. Governor Jared Polis is pushing back against President-elect Donald Trump's mass deportation plan. Colorado law restricts local police and sheriff's deputies from enforcing federal immigration law, and Polis says he is not on board with mobilizing the state's National Guard troops for that. This week, Polis and Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced a new initiative called Governors Safeguarding Democracy, meant to, quote, protect state-level institutions under the Trump administration. The governors say they oppose what they see as federal overreach, like Trump's proposal to use the National Guard to carry out mass deportations. In a statement, Polis said, quote, "We are always appreciative of more federal assistance to make Coloradans safer by prosecuting and deporting dangerous criminals, but we will not support deporting hardworking Americans and targeting innocent children and families." Polis won't authorize Colorado's National Guard and says National Guardsmen coming in from other states like Texas would violate sovereignty. Local law enforcement in Colorado are also restricted from enforcing federal immigration law. The chief of Colorado's police union says that makes Trump's mass deportation plans harder to execute in states like Colorado, even in cities that might be willing to participate.
Yes, it will be more difficult to deport individuals from states like Colorado that have the safe harbor laws in place that don't allow for the communication between local law enforcement and the federal government on those that are here in the country illegally.
So despite those challenges, Trump has made it very clear that he's laser focused on Colorado. At a campaign rally earlier this year in Aurora, Trump announced Operation Aurora, is what he's calling it, an effort focused specifically on deporting migrant gang members. Well, Colorado's Republican delegation is taking on a new target, CDOT. They're asking the federal government to investigate whether federal funding is being misused by the State Department of Transportation and pointing to more deaths in construction zones.
There was a semi-accident on I-70.
The crash earlier this year on I-70 killed 3 people when a truck rolled onto a car. Now the tragedy that happened in this construction zone has the attention of the Republican representatives that Colorado sent to Washington. In a new letter to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Representatives Boebert, Lamborn, and Lopez asked the federal government to investigate CDOT for misusing funds and disregarding safety guidelines. There's been a 60% increase in construction zone fatalities in Colorado from 2022 to 2023, the letter reads. They allege the concerns they have with CDOT led to deaths like the ones here and at 4 other locations around the state this year. Days after the crash on Ward Road, CDOT lowered the speed limit even more through this construction zone and added more signage to get people's attention. CDOT maintains all federal and state guidelines were followed, and an after-action review found everything was implemented in accordance with approved construction plans. Now Congress wants to investigate how CDOT is using its money to increase safety. CDOT says it shares the same concerns about increased fatalities in construction zones. They tell me they've seen more deadly crashes over the past couple of years as they've seen a period of record amounts of construction all around the state. You know the arcade game Frogger? Kind of only know it right now these days as a reference for when pedestrians are trying to dodge cars while jaywalking from one side of the street to the other. East Colfax, kind of a well-known Frogger area. So is the stretch of road right in front of the state capitol, an area that now may be getting an elevated walkway. Marshall Zellander live in front of the capitol where pedestrians have stopped playing Frogger at the moment. But Marshall, you look through the accident stats there and they don't necessarily show the need for a walkway.
Well, they stopped playing Frogger, but that one went against the light, but I shouldn't point that out. Mark, the stats that I found on the city's crash tracking website showed minimal pedestrian-involved crashes here in front of the state capitol on Lincoln at 14th and farther down there at Colfax and Lincoln. But in a year and a half, there may be a pedestrian walkway going over Lincoln to celebrate the country's 250th birthday and the state's 150th birthday. It did not take long to see the game of Frogger in action when we got to the Capitol this afternoon. 3 times in less than 10 minutes, people getting from Veterans Memorial Park, which is in between Lincoln and Broadway, and walking across to the state capitol. According to the stats from the city of Denver, in the last 3 years, there have been 5 pedestrian-involved crashes at Lincoln and Colfax and 2 at Lincoln and 14th Avenue. All 7 of them have been at the intersections, none of them in the middle of the road. And only one of those was this year. But in listening to a presentation inside the state capitol today, the walkway seems less about safety and more about being a public art structure for Colorado's 150th birthday, which would require money from private industries that want their stories told through the walkway artwork.
And so we are going to call on industry and help organize these stories and also hope that those stories come along with financial support so we can turn those stories over to our local artists to integrate into the walkway.
The walkway would likely go from the Capitol West steps, not directly over Lincoln, but maybe meandering at an angle closer to Colfax. It has cost $1.5 million for the concept and design so far. That's public money that has been spent. There's going to be an effort to try to get at least $5 million in private industry business fundraising to try to limit or prevent any future public dollars from going into a walkway over Lincoln, Mark.
So you're telling me that we're turning 150 and we get a meandering walkway. That's, of course, what every Colorado resident wanted for our 150th birthday. So do you and I have to pay for it?
I guess it depends on how much fundraising comes from private business, because if the goal is to have it and then you essentially say it's happening and the money doesn't come in, then it's possible it goes through this P3 office at the state, which is a public-private partnership. If there's not enough private partnership, public help might be needed.
All right, Marshall, get home safe and make sure you make it across without having to play Frogger. Appreciate it. Good night. Hey, we want to say a quick thank you for all that you've done this week to support survivors of domestic violence in Northwest Colorado. Here's Kyle with an update on this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign.
Thank you for being with Next while I'm away. Crime victims who are hurting turn to Colorado's victim services organizations, which are themselves hurting these days due to a significant cut in federal funding. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports advocates of Routt County. They help to protect survivors in Steamboat Springs in Northwest Colorado. They offer an emergency shelter for people escaping violence, a 24/7 crisis line, and follow-up counseling services. They also walk with survivors through the legal process, getting protective orders. We can help cover the cost of those shelter nights, the supplies that they need there. We can help with the cost of the counseling, the crisis line, also that survivors in Northwest Colorado have somewhere to turn. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in donating. More than 3,600 of you have signed up to simplify your giving with a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. Put in your info once, we divide your donation every month among all the nonprofits. We've been able to start your recent micro-giving campaigns thanks to that, with $24,000 in donations each week.
Need a 195-foot tower sitting there. We don't.
An entire town turned out to oppose a massive cell phone tower. But kind of like that pedestrian bridge that no one asked for, looks like they're getting one anyway. And students from 2 Denver schools walked out of class in an effort to save their schools from closing. And we've been building it all week long, our weekly dose of good news. Next. Denver Public Schools says closing and consolidating schools is a necessity, but that doesn't make it popular. Students from 2 schools on the chopping block staged a protest today. Students from the Denver School of Innovation and Sustainable Design and from the DCIS Baker campus walked out of class and to the district office this morning. Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrero has recommended closing a total of 5 elementary schools and 2 secondary schools and restructuring a few other schools. The board will make a final vote and decision on Marrero's recommendation next Thursday. The district closed 3 schools just a year ago. Superintendent Marrero says the additional closures are needed because enrollment just keeps dropping. The town of Villa Grove in Saguache County now has a new reason for you to stop. If you've never heard of it, can't blame you, only 30 people live there. The locals described what's there when we first shared this story with you back in August.
We don't have a lot in Villa Grove. We have pottery, pot, a post office, and upholstery.
I love that description. The 4 Ps, and now there's a 5th. Pottery, pot, post office, upholstery, and phone tower. Construction is almost complete on a 200-foot tall tower that few people in town want. They're worried about the health effects and asked a pretty valid question. In the middle of the Colorado mountains with very little around, why'd they decide to put the tower right next to the houses? County commissioners didn't seem to care much about that question or about what the people of Villa Grove wanted. Still move forward with the construction. Half the entire town of Villa Grove is still suing the county to stop the tower from actually being used. Lauren Robinson, about 15 minutes until that big Avalanche game on KTVD. Nice evening to go outside and watch some hockey.
Yeah, we have an Avalanche game, not an actual avalanche, just to make that distinction. But yes, we will be seeing sunny and seasonal temperatures through the rest of the weekend. In the meantime, 49 degrees at DIA. A little windy this afternoon into this evening. Right now, winds just coming in from the west-southwest at around 10 miles per hour, but that does make it feel closer to 45 degrees on the skin. Now, as we take a look at our live radar, we have a system off to the west. It's going to bring some light snow showers in the high country tomorrow. And then beyond that, we're going to look for some light snowfall across the Front Range and Eastern Plains early next week. In the meantime, not a whole lot on our live radar as we go through the rest of the evening. Overnight, pretty chilly, but not unseasonally so. We're going to see lows in the 20s and 30s with some teens and single digits in the high country. And then tomorrow, temperatures are going to look a lot like what we saw today. Lower to middle 50s across the Front Range and Eastern Plains with some 30s up in the mountains. So the next few days, we're going to continue to see sunny skies, temperatures in the lower to middle 50s all the way through Monday. Tuesday is when we're going to look for our next chance for snow. Just the dusting across the Front Range and Eastern Plains is all we're really expecting, but we're going to watch for that as we move into Tuesday. Wednesday, the back end of the system as it moves out, going to bring some chillier temperatures, breezy conditions, but then we're back in the 60s and upper 50s by late next week.
A lot of eyes on Mike Tyson's return to the ring tonight. Not a lot of money on it, though, at least here in Colorado. They're shutting out bets.
My good news is we welcome Weston James to the world on August 28th.
And whether your good news is big or small, we want to hear about it. We're sharing our favorite Friday question next. Reckless e-scooter riders around town can be a menace, but that's not the scooter company's problem. Colorado's second highest court made that clear this week. The Court of Appeals ruled yesterday that scooter companies cannot be held liable if a rider on a scooter hurts someone else. A cyclist sued the scooter company Lime over a crash back in 2020. She said the person on the scooter appeared drunk when they hit her. The cyclist accused Lime of negligence, saying the company isn't taking enough steps to make sure scooter riders don't hurt others. But the court ultimately sided with the scooter company, saying there's nothing in Colorado's laws requiring those companies to protect the public from its riders.
Tonight's next question comes from Tim, who wants to know why Colorado's legalization of sports betting doesn't seem to apply to all sporting events.
Hey, next team. A couple of friends and I are going to watch the Mike Tyson Logan Paul fight coming up this Friday night, and we were trying to figure out how to place some bets on it. One of my friends mentioned that because it's not a quote-unquote real fight, that Colorado law won't allow for bets. I guess we were just looking for some clarification on this. Thanks.
All right, Tim, let's dig into it. When it comes to Mike Tyson's exhibition match tonight against YouTuber Jake Paul, all bets are off in Colorado and a handful of other states, actually. And that's literally. Colorado's gaming division told us they won't allow bets because the match doesn't meet their minimum standards. For example, Tyson is a former pro and not currently professionally ranked. Rounds will be shorter, not just about 2 minutes for these fights. And both Tyson and Paul will wear 14-ounce gloves. That's heavier than the standard for heavyweight fights, and it's meant to reduce the power of their punches. So there's your answer, Tim. I hope it helps. Send us your next question. Ask anything about what you want to know. We'll try to answer it. We welcome written and video questions. Email them to us at next@9news.com or text them at 303-871-1491. Well, each Friday for the past 406 weeks, we have ended things on a high note by heading out to find your good news all across the state. Today, we found it at Brickfest. Yes, Brickfest, not breakfast, not your morning meal.
This right here is the Brickfest Live. It is it's the #1 attended family event for Brick fans. We welcome all Lego fans, young and old.
It gets kids off the screens.
My good news is we welcome Weston James to the world on August 28th, and he is our blessing and our miracle.
Good news, good news.
In 3 days I get to go home and get married.
My 2-year-old is upgraded in her swimming school, so she's able to swim on her own now.
We sell a rose kit, so I already bought her that. So I'm gonna build that for her on her wedding day, and she's gonna carry the Lego roses.
My good news is my daughter, Kennedy Madison O'Connor. She recently graduated and became a nursing assistant. She is going back also to finish and get her RN license. I'm so proud of her.
Last week I got laid off. But you know what? It's good news. I got a little bit of time to do some of this fun stuff, and I'm on a new path to open a new chapter in my life.
They made a bet with me to walk across our brick pit without socks on, and let me tell you, it was the stupidest $10 I ever made. When you're able to branch out and see all the different families, all the different peoples, all the different cultures that come to enjoy Brickfest Live, it's really something special.
I love that dude getting married next week. Bachelor party at Brickfest. Marilyn, thank you. Your feedback this evening, a text coming in that says, I've never seen a newscast like Next, and we love it, especially the bits of positive news and celebration of giving. The good news is our favorite part of every Friday, especially like the guy today who got laid off last week, but he's enjoying Brickfest. It's all about perspective. We'll see you next time.